Hey everybody, welcome to the Christian Cable. Today what we're going to do, we're actually going to discuss something that's very special and that I think needs to be talked about. There needs to be a video on this. A few quick things up front. We're still on our Sermon on the Mount series. Last time we were in Matthew chapter 5, verse 21 through 26. We were talking about dealing with others and relationship is more important than religion, things like that. And today's is, the next couple of verses 27 through 30 in Matthew chapter 5. But really what this video is going to be about is struggling with sin. And I'll tell you right now, if there is a video that only one video that you could share right now, for now, it'd be this one. So let's go ahead and jump on in. Alright, so as I mentioned earlier, we are going to address struggling with sin. But before we do that, let's use the first two verses, 27 and 28, to kind of give us a foundation, kind of give us a starting place. These first two verses deal with a sin that just about everybody struggles with, and that sin is adultery. If you don't know what adultery is, it's sex outside of marriage, or those kind of acts outside of the marriage context with one person. You may feel that you have not committed this sin, but let's see how Christ defines it. It says here, starting with verse 27, "You have heard that it was said, 'Do not commit adultery,' but I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart." So, what does that say? It says that adultery is not just a physical action, but what goes on in your mind. To give you a little bit of my personal testimony, physically I've not struggled with this sin, physically, but mentally I've failed thousands of times, and that's a literal figure. I don't want to go into detail on that because this video is not about my sin; it's about dealing with sin. In as we go through this, your sin may not be adultery, and that's good. I mean, if your sin may be something else, whether it's drugs, drinking, it doesn't. I don't know. It doesn't matter. And if you're struggling with a sin, it's all on the same level. So no matter whatever your sin is, Christ goes into detail. He goes down to the smallest detail, with thoughts and words and things like that to show us that, hey, we're guilty of sin. And he does this for a couple of reasons. One, to show that, or to tell us that there's no good way about us. Even though, we'll have good deeds and things like that, we'll do good, we won't ever be perfect. I'm sorry, Romans 3:23, "For all sin and fall short of the glory of God." That's given. Short, sweet, and to the point. Also, number two, Christ wants us to stop playing games with legalism. That's why he goes down to these small details, like thoughts and words. In verse 28, when it says, anyone who even looks a woman lustfully, he does those things, commits those acts in his mind, his or her mind. In John 3:19, it says, we like the darkness. We find a temporary pleasure in sin, and again, I'll admit to it. I'm guilty of trying to find a loophole, in the Bible, or trying to say the Bible doesn't say I can't, play games with the words that the Bible says to do these things that I know I shouldn't be doing. I mean, I'm guilty of doing that. So many times do I see that we play games with the lives God gives us, because we're trying not to get caught and not to be guilty of our own wrongdoing. So, regardless of whatever the sin is, down to the smallest detail, we're flawed, we're imperfect, we'll struggle. So we've defined adultery, we've talked about sin. Now let's talk about how to fight this issue. And this is in verses 29 through 30. Verse 29 says, "If your right eye causes you to sin, gouge it out and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell." In verse 30 it says, "If your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. It's better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to go into hell." So these verses are analogies. They're not literal meanings of, cutting off body parts and throwing them away like that. That's not what he means. He's not crazy. There's none of that. What Christ wants us to do when we struggle with sin is disconnect ourselves from what is causing us to sin. Cutting off limbs, or gouging out your eye, the things that those examples he was using there, that's to show you how severe, how much we need to disconnect ourselves. Because think about it, when you cut off your hand, that thing's not growing back. we have to disconnect ourselves from those things that make us vulnerable. And yes, this means that you may have to lose some computer stuff or technology, things like that. Yes, you may have to end some relationships, friendships, so on. And yes, you may have to make some dramatic changes in your life. And I'm sorry. I mean, I've had to make those. And if you want to get out of sin, that's one of the things that has to happen. Because our relationship with God is so much more than what we could ever have here on earth. So, if I had to give you a step-by-step process of how to stop struggling with sin, first thing I would tell you is, step one is tell someone you can trust you're struggling with the sin. I mean, if you don't have someone like that, go to your pastor or another minister. They'll pray for you and won't let anybody know about anything. And when I say, someone you trust, this is, brother or sister, somebody that has your best interest at heart. And when I say brother and sister, I don't mean like your biological brother or sister. I'm talking like somebody you are so close to that will not share this information, that will keep this to them, pray for it secretly. Step two, I'd have to say is ask God to help you with this struggle and ask for His guidance. Because, when you ask Him, hey, what should I do? Who should I go to? What's the next step? God will show you. If He could show me, He could show you. Step three, I'd have to say, and we kind of already talked about it, is disconnect yourself from whatever it is that makes you vulnerable. Yeah, that includes friends. I don't know if I can stress that one enough. I'll tell you this, over the past couple years, my little circle of friends has been getting smaller and smaller and smaller because I notice that, I don't need to be around them. I'm vulnerable to doing this thing that God doesn't want me to do when I hang around them. It doesn't mean I can't be nice to them, but it means that I need to keep some distance. I need to disconnect myself. It doesn't mean I have to completely forget who they are and make them, public enemy number one. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking just, what? There needs to be some boundaries. There needs to be some parameters set up that you don't leave. Discipline in your life. And yeah, that's a really hard one to do, especially if you've known somebody for a long time. I will say, though, by doing that, my little list of brothers and sisters, remember, not biological, these are people that have my best interests at heart, and they'll, go through thick and thin with me. Those people, that list has been getting a little bigger and bigger every year. Because I know who I can trust, I know who I can go to for help, and I know who I can put my faith in, other than God, of course. And I'll tell you that's so much better than just some large group of acquaintances. So much more valuable, so much better. Step 4, and this one is very important, so really pay attention. If you're writing these steps down, good. If you're not, get a pen and back up in the video and start writing these down. But step 4 is important. It's surround yourself with those who will support you, who will support your fight against the sin. This could be like a Sunday school class or small group of people that you meet with all the time or you have connections with. You need to surround yourself with people that have overcome this sin before. And then those that will value and strive for a pure and godly life. People who live and fight these battles every day just to maintain a pure life and a good relationship with Christ. And I'll tell you, all three of those types of people you will find in a church. And if you go back to step 2, you start asking God to help you with this struggle and ask for His guidance. Where should I go? Who should I talk to? And you mean that, God will take you to who He wants. If you'll let Him. You got to let Him do it, though. One last question to address, and then I'll wrap up the video. What if I fall? I'll tell you this, a little more of my personal testimony. It was a little while ago where I went to the altar. I went forth during a service, and I just said, I gave it to God. I gave it up to Him, and God's turning me around. But I'll tell you this, I fail. I still fall every now and then. Because you know what? Hey, we're not perfect. No one is. And you won't ever be perfect. I mean, until you go in before the presence of the Lord and He gives you your new body when you get to heaven. God knows our past, He knows our present, and He knows our future. He knows exactly what we're going to do and when we're going to do it. And Christ came to forgive all sin, not a little bit, not most, forgive it all. That was the whole point of Christ. That's the whole point of this passage. I encourage you, if you're watching, you're struggling with something, or you know somebody that's struggling, share this video with them. Or if you wrote down these steps and things, go share that with them. I mean, again, as I mentioned in the beginning of this video, if there's something, one thing that you had to share with somebody today or anytime, let it be something like this. Let it be this video. I want to thank y'all for watching today. In the description, I have a link to a radio station called Air One. That's something I listen to, when I'm on the road, and I listen to regularly. It's a great station, great people, great music. I love it. Not to use the word great over and over again. And another website that I have in the description is about a man that you may have heard of on the news and on radio stations. A man by the name of Saeed. He was the one who's building orphanages. I think it was in Iran, and he got arrested, and he's now in prison, one of Iran's toughest prisons, and his sentence was for 8 years, and the only thing they, charge him for was being a Christian, sharing his faith. So, from what I understand, this issue has reached some pretty powerful ears. I mean, obviously God knows, but I mean, some pretty powerful people here on earth. So if you'll go to that website, sign that petition, share it with your friends, it'd be great. Share this video, check out some other things that I have, subscribe, rate, things like that. I'd really appreciate it. Remember, it's not for me, it's for everybody else. But yeah, I think that's about it, so I'll see y'all next time.